Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Sunnyside City Council Workshop for Monday, June 7th, 2021. The time is now 6:30. This meeting is being held via the Zoom conferencing application to enable City Council members, city staff, and residents to participate remotely. Please allow one person to speak at a time. I will call on every member to make sure you have had an opportunity to ask questions. I will now ask City Clerk Renteria to start a roll call, please.
Mayor Guerrero,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Brorsman,
I'm here.
Councilor Farmer, Councilor Henry,
I'm here.
Councilor Restucci,
I'm here.
Councilor Hicks,
I'm here.
Councilor Hart,
I'm here.
awesome. City Manager Casey,
Here.
City Clerk Renteria, I am here. Finance Director Alba,
Here.
Fire Chief Anderson,
I'm here.
Police Chief Escalera,
Excused?
Public Works Director Fisher.
Here.
Mayor, it looks like Councilor Farmer is the only one not here. We can revisit that later if you'd like.
Actually, he let me know he wasn't going to be able to make it tonight. So unless there's an objection, we'll go and excuse him for tonight's meeting. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Councilor Farmer is excused for tonight's meeting. And we'll move into our active agenda, which is going to be a skate park update. Looks like we have Mr. Hester from the port.
Thank you, Council. I'm going to actually turn this over to Bill Lang to begin the the presentation we're going to put on for you this evening. I'm going to mic out here for just a second. Bill?
Thanks, Jay. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So my name is Bill Lang, and I'm the president-elect of the Sunnyside Daybreak Rotary Club here in town. And as you might well know, our Rotary Club wants to build a skate park in Central Park. And we've been hosting the Ale Fest for a number of years, and it's been quite successful, and we've raised quite a bit of money. But as you know, year of 2020 went by and we weren't able to have an Ale Fest. And of course, 2021 this year, we weren't sure if we would be able to do it safely and have a fundraiser. So that's kind of, gone by the wayside also. So our project was kind of losing a little momentum. So back in February, I contacted Evergreen Skate Parks. They're a husband and wife team of skate park builders down in Portland. And they met with us at the site in Central Park. And part of this presentation, you're going to see a rendering. And I got to caution everybody that they provided this rendering. It's more of a concept, just so we could use it for fundraising, because people ask, what's a skate park look like? And we had some visual thing. So let's not get too far out in the weeds as far as asking questions, or why you can ask any questions. But as far as the details of this park, this was not meant to be a final design of any means. This was just to help us to put a visual together for fundraising. So we've raised a lot of money from the community, and the Rotary Club, is committed to building a quality concrete skate park downtown in Central Park behind the pool. And Mr. Casey and other members of the city have been very gracious in allowing us several different sites to look at, and this turned out to be the best one. So to move this thing forward, we're going to need the city council's help. And so I'll just thank you in advance for that. And I guess I need to introduce Jay Hester, who's a fellow Rotarian and a member of our club, because he can provide any additional details or things that, you may have questions for me or Jay.
So where's this rendering at?
Evening, council. I'm going to have Jackie, are you running the slides for us?
I am. You can tell me next slide whenever you're ready.
Let's go to the, well, just to, I'll follow back up with what Bill is saying. I want to give you guys kind of a, how this community project has really come along. And we were probably around 250,000 earlier this spring from what Bill and I knew of the funds that were raised. And with the absence of this event this year, we've have folks still donating to the project and hoping to see this thing through fruition. So let's go to the next slide. And just to finish off my statement there, here's the list of our majority of our sponsors and the largest sponsors that we have to date. There are more, there are others. We weren't able to fit them all on the slide, but obviously with the project and what we're trying to pull together, we're going to have Bill and I've discussed with each other and the club that we'll have a sponsor wall or sponsor plaque or sponsor type of monument somewhere on the property once it's finished. So nobody will be missed. Next slide. And here's the rendering Bill was referring to. It is larger than what we would be building, but this is to give you the idea of what we're wanting to accomplish here in the location. I wanted to point out through the bullets here that we have on the page here, obviously located in Central Park. We're evaluating companies, obviously based on cost and effectiveness and the overall being able to develop and build the project we're looking at for late summer, early fall this year. The park is to accommodate skaters from beginner to intermediate. And we've visited with Bonzi and fellow skaters in the community on this through the process and making sure we'll involve them in the final design. This is, as I said, it's a concept. There's more work to come to the council before we finalize on the design, and we'll run that by you folks before obviously we commit to construction. And as you can see, the park with being beginner to intermediate will be able to be utilized by roller skaters, scooters, and bicycles, and hopefully to accommodate various different type of I'm not sure how novel skating products. So the concern we've heard throughout the community is we don't want to disrupt the sledding hill, and we will not with this project. We've pushed it back far enough close to the volleyball courts and just on the west side of the pool. So we feel comfortable in this location and have surveyed the location and have our we'll have obviously being able to lay that out for folks that want to see where it is in the park, if to verify to make sure we're not disrupting or messing up a location that potentially the council or community members would have heartburn over. The other item that we wanted to bring up and point out to you folks tonight is that we have verified and visited with SVID, your city staff, and then obviously the Port of Sunnyside. All of us have a interest in this location of the skate parks and support his utilities, SVID, and the city all in the area where the park will be.
Have a what?
Did I miss you?
Julia, did you have a question?
I thought I heard somebody ask a question. Is there a question? Okay. Well, actually, with what I have here and what I've discussed, is there any questions for me at this point?
Council, is there any questions? Please go ahead and ask them. I don't think we're gonna have a ton of questions since we know this is a very preliminary plan. So if somebody, council members have a question, please go ahead and speak up.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have one question. You know, and I know you said this rendering is just for, you know, visual purposes and it's not an exact thing. Is it going to take up that much space in our park?
No.
No, it will not.
It will not.
Okay, because I see our park getting used for a lot of different things, and I'd hate to see it be so dominated by a skate park that we can't use the park for other events. I mean, we've held car shows in our parks. We've had the Cinco de Mayo horse event in our park. We've had with swim champs, we've had people camping in the park. We've had that all set up, and I'd hate to have that all disappear As much as I am behind this, I support this 100%, but I want to make sure that our park is still usable for the other activities too.
No, understood. That's a good question. No, the actual area we're looking to build is around 5,000 square feet. So it's probably a third of what you see here, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. What we'll do, Deputy Mayor, is we'll propose it on the property, mark it out, and then request you guys to stop by and take a look at the location. We've done preliminary engineering of the area to verify the elevations and the impact of the property. So once we get closer to a design layout and what we're looking for, we'll bring it over to you guys and have you guys walk the property with us.
Deputy Mayor Guerrero.
Yes, ma'am, go right ahead.
Okay, my question is that when we use the park for the dancing horses, isn't that a little bit higher up the hill, closer to the top of the sled? Probably off to, if I'm looking at this right, probably off to the right of where you're putting the skateboard. There's a platform there, there's a pavilion kind of thing. Is this to the north of that? I'm just thinking in terms of, I'm just trying to create a visual in my head here is all.
Right, and I'm not quite sure where that was looking. Mr. Casey might know more about how this is oriented.
So I don't know if folks will be able to see this very clearly. This is a little larger view of Central Park. If you look, you can see the parking lot, large parking lot. Here's the swimming pool facility. And, oops, sorry.
Oh, thank you. No, that's better.
Okay, here's the swimming pool facility there. And then this is the general area in which they are looking. Now, when this was first sketched out for them, this is considerably larger. This little square or polyhedron there is considerably larger than the area that they're looking for, but we wanted to give them a location so that we could, as Jay referenced, evaluate utilities, evaluate other infrastructure that might be in place there where power already was and so forth. So that site was originally a little over 10,000 square feet. Now the actual park that they're proposing will fit within that, but it will be smaller than that. And that's roughly the location they're looking at. So that gives you a little, hopefully gives council a little better understanding of the placement within the overall park. There's still quite a bit of free area. The whole sledding hill, as Jay talked about, remains completely free and unencumbered. It will not interfere with the small stage that we have here that is used at events like National Night Out. The placement was calculated to kind of complement other activities, but not interfere with anything else that is typically scheduled there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I think for everybody, we're going to develop this further along. We needed to get the survey so we could convey it to the city. Martin can work through that, and there's going to be some other things we're going to have to work through the details. So this is to get you guys the idea of what we're trying to accomplish and the seriousness behind the project. I know you guys have heard obviously discussions from your level, and I think there's been other presentations. We're getting close. We've felt that it's to the point where we need to make our commitments as a club and then make commitments to the city and go back and forth. And Martin's going to work with us to develop the plan on how we'll be able to convey the property and work through the process. That can be done with Rotary Clubs building infrastructure inside of a city park. There's still to work through that through your legal department. And just to show you that once this project is completed, we're not looking for it to just stop there. We want to continue with supporting projects within Sunnyside's community for youth. The original plan for the Rotary Club when I was president was to fund youth programs through the community. It went from, I think, a $5,000 donation for the refreshment stand there in South Hill Park to, 5 years later, we're building a $300,000 skate park. So the community is really behind it, and the supporters and the finances. And we just wanted to share with you our vision and our ideas and hope that you guys are coming along with us. And we want to do this for the community. So.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. I just want to commend the Rotary for the work that they're doing on this. You know, as a longtime council member and someone who had the honor to open the first skate park in our city, I'm super excited to see this happening. And you have my full support, Mr. Hester. So whatever my office can do to help, don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you.
Is there additional slides?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Henry, go right
Just
ahead.
had one. Just does anyone know off the top of their head what the square footage of the old or of the Sunny View skate park is? Is that about 5,000 square feet roughly? Does anyone know?
Councilor Henry, yes, that does sound about right. We did a quick survey of it or calculation of it earlier in this process. It's a square site and about that size. It's a fairly modest sized skate park.
Okay, cool. I was just getting a picture in my head. Thank you.
Council members, additional questions for Mr. Hester?
Mr. Hester, I'm really excited about seeing this come into fruition.
Sure.
I know that you've been working on it and the Daybreak have been working on it for quite a little while. And I'm glad to see that you've already scheduled next year's Ale Fest. And I really recognize how well you have centrally located where this park will be. So there are many things people can enjoy while they're down taking advantage of our central park, as well as the many other amenities in that area. So good on you for and President Lang there. Good job to all of you guys. It's really great to see. I'm excited to see it. I can't skate anymore, but I can sure enjoy watching. So that'll be fun.
Well, that was kind of our point. I mean, Bill really took this project back. We've been, COVID has taken most of our communities back. This is one of those silver linings I see from COVID for everyone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we take this opportunity when Bill brought it to Martin and then came back to me and said, "Hey, can you help? Can you be involved?" It was, it's a huge passion for me to see this area and the flow for the community. It's always been one of our best attributes, the park, and what a great place to put another cherry on it, in my opinion. So,
good job.
All right, council members, additional questions? All right, Jay, I think we are good. And the last slide actually shows a little green rectangle where kind of the general location, which is kind of a nice visual.
Yeah, I took that from Martin's one slide that he had. It's still probably bigger than what the area is because of the pool size and everything, but just to give you how that's going to look, as you can see, the sliding hill still not interrupted. It's a good spot. It's in the flat. There's a little bit of a hill on the side, but for the most part, we'll be clear and plenty of room to still have a car show in the park and to do other things. So for sure.
Excellent. Just a quick question. Is there, how much more financing are we still, are you guys looking to raise still to get to that building stage?
We've got it.
I think we're here.
Okay.
We're here.
Excellent.
Yeah,
all right. So just a matter of getting the final kind of details in place and kind of hopefully moving forward, it sounds like.
Yeah, the club will work through details with the design builder and then come back with more of a rendering for this location and mark it off, and you guys have the blessing on it. It's where we're looking for. Yep.
Yay.
And ultimately, we'll bring this back to council as an action item to kind of enter into that partnership with Rotary to be able to do this. We've done the legal research already preliminarily. There's a existing state statute, RCW 51-12-050, that specifically calls out and authorizes local governments to be able to partner with volunteer groups, community groups, businesses for these kinds of community improvement parks projects. And it allows the private entity to do most of the construction. And it's a great little statute that's been on the books since the 1950s and doesn't always get invoked often, but this is a perfect opportunity to apply it.
Excellent. So it sounds like you got plenty of support from council. So looking forward to groundbreaking day and completion. So thank you for all the hard work and looking forward to the final product.
Great. Thank you, council.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, thank you for coming by and giving us an update, and I appreciate the time and effort put into the slides and giving us a visual where everything's going to be at. And I appreciate the hard work, like everyone else said, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, folks. You guys have a nice night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, up next we have our pool reopening plan update. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I don't want to steal Elizabeth's thunder, other than I'm going to take a moment to acknowledge, we're in the midst of a recruitment process to replace our recreation coordinator. And we're, of course, coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has set unprecedented restrictions and regulations and requirements on how we navigate opening and offering services at a pool. And we are in a very challenging labor market that exists not just here, but around the state and even around the country with regard to limited applications for pool staff. And through all of that, Finance Director Elizabeth Alba has taken point, worked through the problems, studied the manuals, brought on board staff, and is on track to enable us to open in just a week from today. Remarkable achievement. I'm just very excited by what she's been able to pull together, and it may not look exactly like the pool that we've had in years past, given all those challenges, but we will have a pool. And I also should do a shout out to Public Works that have done so many improvements inside and in the facility over the last year. But just it's been really exciting to see. And so with that introduction, I will turn over to Elizabeth to give you the details on what she's worked out.
Thank you, City Manager. And here's what I will preface this with. I have swam in lots of swimming pools, and I was one of the kids that rode their bicycle every day to the public pool in Grandview so that I could go and rode my bicycle home. And that was no small feat because I lived probably about 4 miles out of town. So I know the value and know how much it means to kids to have that resource. And with that, that's about the only thing I really knew about a pool before I had to start taking over the pool rules and just with COVID. So not only did I have to educate myself on the pool, but I had to educate myself on what is a normal operation. So I started out with reading over the WAC that is in regard to pool regulations. And so I basically just kind of gave myself a self-tutorial on what are the things that has to happen at a pool and what are the things that are required. And then I went through and did some analysis of now what's required when it's COVID-19 under the different phases. So I'm going to quickly just give you guys a little bit of rundown on phase 1 and 2. I don't think we'll go back there, but just in case, the limit on number of swimmers, not including staff, would be 50. There's a 6-foot requirement separation from anyone outside your household, even while you're in the pool. So that really, really was worrisome for me because when this started, we were in phase 2 and I thought, wow, it's going to be really hard to have just 50 swimmers in it. Phase 3, we're allowed to have 125 swimmers. The 6-foot rule is in the bathhouse, in the line, on the deck. But then in the water, it's called a 3-foot wiggle room. So basically, you have to maintain kind of a 3-foot little bubble around yourself. Saying that, let's talk a little bit about what we've done to help identify and what we've done at the pool to kind of figure some of these things out. As Martin said, or Mr. Casey said, I did get staff on board a little sooner than I normally would. The manager and 2 assistant managers have started working and have worked the last about week and a half, doing some different tasks and hauling things for me and getting things to the pool that have been sitting in my office, getting together the first aid kits, One of the other things that they did is they actually went out on the sidewalk and painted fish on our sidewalks so that we would have a marking for 6 feet so we could maintain physical distance, but it wouldn't be something ugly and it wouldn't be a sticker. And if it's permanent, it's okay because it's a fish at the pool and it matches our big fish tank at the other end. So we're trying to make things aesthetically pleasing and fun for kids. I think the kids will probably like having fish on the sidewalk. So that was one of the things that the lifeguards started. Another thing that we've been doing is obviously inside the entire bathhouse has been painted and the managers are working on cleaning. We have new signage. When we looked at the signage that was up, a lot of it was homemade. It's kind of things that had probably been up since the facility went up. So we're getting new signage throughout and new diaper changing stations for both the men's room and the ladies' room. And then just other small things, having lockers is new this year. They will no longer need to have the bags, which does 2 things. It allows our staff to not have to handle people's stuff. And it also allows our staff to not be responsible for what could be somebody's cell phone or wallet, or the implication that maybe they took that cell phone or wallet. So now we have the lockers. They do have the ability to lock. We will be renting out locks for people that come and forget one. And, you know, we're really, really nice and friendly. So another COVID thing that is going to be happening, we have to do temperature checks. Now, we won't be recording the temperature. We will just be recording the name of the individual that's there at the pool and a contact phone number for them. And just a check off that says, yes, we've checked their temperature. If your temperature has been checked, you'll be given a bracelet that is a certain color for the day. And then once you get in, then you do your, your pay and go to your swimming. We have to maintain those records for 28 days. So we will have papers that basically have the information. They will be locked in a container. And we actually have a portable, what I call the COVID station, and it will have the temperature checks information, and it will have the actual units. It will have masks. There will be gloves in there. For some reason, someone needs gloves. And then obviously the wristbands. And this will be portable. So when there's a swim meet or there is swim team practice, we can move that to the gate on the other side. And swim team and I have been working together on developing a way for them to rapidly enter the pool so that it doesn't bog down their practice and we spend a half hour just getting people in. So they're going to provide us with a roster. So we'll just be able to check someone off that we've done it. We have 3 of the temperature check machines. They can use 2 of their volunteers, and we can assist to get them all in the pool rapidly. And again, they'll have a wristband. So once they've been checked, then they're done. And then we can roll that back into the pool. Several other things are different this year. And it was really hard for me because I really enjoy going down a slide, but we knew that one of our biggest issues was going to be cleaning, and the handrails on the slide would have to be cleaned after every time someone goes up the handrails. So we decided that the slide, the diving boards would not be used, and also the life jackets, because those cleaning measures were pretty extreme. We did decide not to let the showers be used, and the reasoning behind that is because of sanitary. Again, you would have to have someone take a shower and then go in and sanitize after each time. So we decided that that was something we just didn't think would be cost effective or even practical. We also eliminated lap swim, and that's a really hard one for me because I actually had several meetings with community members that just absolutely love our pool for the lap swim, because we are one of the only Olympic-sized swimming pools, in Eastern Washington, in fact. So lap swim is closed, and here's the reasoning behind that. So I'm trying to offer as many people as I can access to the pool. When I'm limited to 50 or I'm limited to 125, I have to look at how many people logically can be in the pool, socially distanced, and actually provide a good entertainment value. A lap swimmer takes an entire lane and only one person can swim during the lap swim. So I just said to myself, I really want to make sure that I can get kids in the pool, families in the pool that want to swim, and offer as much as I can to the community instead of limiting it to just a few individuals. So there is also a few things, no private rentals this year, because we really wanted to make sure that we were able to offer open swim, family swim 7 days a week so people can use the pool. One of the other things, if you go to the next page, Jackie. You'll see that our pool is a little bit different schedule. We have open swim starting at 11 a.m. and going to 1 o'clock. That is a different time than we've had in the past. It's earlier, kind of goes through lunch. And then we have a 2 to 4 session and a 5 to 7 session for family swim. So timing was everything with this. We needed to allow time for cleaning. So you'll see that we get done at 1 and we don't start back up until 2. That offers staff enough time to go in and do a very thorough cleaning of the facility. The other thing that it does, these hour breaks in between our sessions, is it allows the lifeguards to take breaks and lunches. So I have 14 hired staff, 3 of which are a manager and 2 assistant managers. We have to have 7 employees employed to keep the pool open, just to have the right people in positions. That's the bare minimum. That's even not having our slide and our diving boards open. So when I have 14 staff, it means the pool manager, the assistant managers, they will be lifeguards also. They will need to be on the deck in the rotation. There are going to be times when it may be necessary to shut a session down if they do not have enough staff to cover. I've talked to the pool manager about it, and I've said, you know, one of the things is, yes, we want this pool open, but we want it open safely. So if you don't have enough staff, I need you to put a sign up that said, sorry, we're closed due to short staffing. And we have created a big sandwich board with our open sign, and it says, you know, come in, we're open, and our times. And that sandwich board will go out whenever we're open so that people know we're open, it's there, they don't have to get out of their car, it'll be on the sidewalk. And then if we're not and the sign is not there, they'll know we've probably closed down for some reason.
Elizabeth,
The other
I'm
thing that
sorry, if I may, just to,
Sure.
for council's context, I think we've mentioned this before, but just as a reminder, our normal staffing levels, the minimum under which we've ever opened the pool before, has been between 25 and 30. And this year we're going to try to do it with 14. We're not alone in that. Grandview is understaffed, Prosser is understaffed. There are some pools in the Tri-Cities and Toppenish that aren't opening at all. So this is a widespread issue. We've been working real closely, and Elizabeth especially has been, of course, working closely with some of our neighboring pools to try to provide complementary services so that we can each maximize the options available at each pool. But to try to pull this off with 14, it's required a lot of creativity and innovation and effort to stay in compliance with the health requirements that we have to be following during our current phase. Sorry, thank you, Elizabeth.
No problem. Sometimes I forget all the things that I've had to do because I've just kind of been rolling with it as things go. And like you said, we did have a meeting with a Zoom meeting with Gretchen and Kathia with the Prosser Pool, well, Aquatic Center. And so I can give you a little bit of how their operations would, if you're interested, but they have done a drastically different plan and taking on different things than we are. So I think if between the three pools, there'll be enough amenities offered for all of the people in this area. So if there's not something offered here, it'll be offered in Grandview or Prosser. And I think people will be able to get their fun in this summer. So let's talk a little bit about admission prices. I clearly did not want to come in and start charging different prices. I think that our prices are reasonable. We know that our prices will never cover the actual operations. So we just left them the same. So $2 for 4 to 7 years old, $3 for 8 years and up, and children under 3 swim for free with their parents. We decided not to offer season passes. The reason behind that is I really wasn't certain if we'd be able to keep the pool open the entire season. And then the season passes would then need to be refunded or prorated back as a refund. And I knew that that would be probably not something that we would want to do. It would really, shake up our revenues. Also be confusing, I think, for staffing and all of the things that we have going on that are changes. I think next year we'll be able to bring back season passes and approach it in a little different manner. And the other thing that I do want to say, we put it on our brochure and we put it on the website. Stay tuned, things may change, and we will update as needed. If in 2 weeks the governor says we're wide open, you can go back to, every day as normal, we're going to attempt to do that at the pool as best we can with the staff that we have. We are going to leave the lifeguard positions open. I have another new lifeguard training course that's going to be offered the week of the 15th. And we're trying to make it so that we have staff that are available. But like I said, we're going to do the best we can. We want to get those kids in the pool. And with that, I'll answer any questions anyone has.
Council will go down the list of council members, so we'll see if there's any questions or comments for pool reopening plan update. And we'll start with Councilor Henry.
No questions, just really looking forward to seeing the pool open after last year and everything. So thank you for all your hard work.
Councilor Hart.
Oh, yes. I think this is going to work out really well this year. Thanks for you and your staff putting all this together, Elizabeth. I think this is going to be a great way to get us started again. And like you said, stay tuned, things may change. So that's exciting as well. Good job.
Deputy Mayor Brosma.
Yeah, echoing what my colleagues have said, Elizabeth, you and your staff have done an amazing amount of work. It had to have been a huge project. So a great deal of respect for all of you and everything that you've done. You answered the question that I was going to ask. What are you going to do if the governor suddenly decides to open us all up again? And you pretty well covered that one. So yeah, I look forward to seeing the pool open as well. My family spent a lot of very good time there. And so I look forward to seeing people there and hearing the noises and everything that goes along with it. So well done.
Councilor Restucci.
Nothing more to add, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the work that was done by staff on all of this.
Councilor Hicks.
Yeah, my colleagues have said everything I was going to say. Great job.
Okay, and I don't have any questions, so sounds like you got off on an easy one on this one, Elizabeth. So good job.
Well, and I have one question of council. I would like to know if you would be in support of a grand opening or a ribbon cutting ceremony on the 14th, and if we could pull that off by Monday.
Yeah.
I think it would be something that would be well received, and I think it would be really, really neat to, at least have it in the paper. I'd like to invite Chase that did the mural. And then give the people that are there an opportunity to look and see what things look like before we go to the public.
I think that's a great idea, especially having the freshened up interior and paint and the upgrades that got done inside. I think is definitely something that would create a buzz for the pool. Hopefully enough that we get people to enjoy it this summer. And ribbon cuttings always attract some amount of people. So I'm 100% behind it. So unless there's an objection, I think we should move forward with this.
Absolutely. Go for it. Make it happen.
Okay.
All right, Elizabeth, hear no objection. You are good to go. Okay, so up next we have our waste slash sewer rate unit of measurement conversion. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. This also will be primarily a presentation from Finance Director Alba, just to introduce briefly. As council is aware, we've been doing some work in public works related to our water meter and system. One of the features of the system that we've been converting to is that it does some measurements in gallons. And folks may be aware that if they've looked at their utility bills in the past, the old system did measurement in cubic feet, which is not, frankly, as common a unit of measurement. Most people, they've seen a gallon of milk at the grocery store. They haven't seen a cubic foot of milk. And so as we've been launching this conversion, Director Alba and Director Fisher and Water Supervisor Tiliano have been working out how do we affect the finance, and turns out there's going to be potentially some council action needed to be able to convert the way our ordinances are calculating this. And I'll let her go into the rest of that, but this is just to kind of give you the background information on what that'll look like. With that, turn that over to Director Alba.
Thank you, City Manager. So really this came about is our new meter system, which is the base tower reads. When you go to look at a report and you're trying to track down whether somebody has a leaking toilet or dripping faucets, it takes a very long time for that to show up on one of their reports, because if you imagine a dripping faucet can drip, and it will take, it can take anywhere from a half hour to an hour before you even get a quart. Well, imagine trying to get to basically 7 cubic feet. So 7 cubic feet is, or not 7 cubic feet, sorry. 1 gallon is equal to 7.3, I don't know the conversion exactly, but it's 7.34. So it takes you 7 times as long to get to the same measurement in a gallon. And so I've lived in this world before. In Grandview, I was the utility billing clerk for 5 years. Grandview uses gallons. When I came here, I knew I was going to struggle with the conversion. I have a little worksheet that I use to convert. But I've managed to figure it out, and I've managed to kind of limp my way along. Well, our water department also struggles with the cubic feet. We struggle in the water department with trying to identify those small leaks and the things that come through. So by converting to gallons, we'll be able to tell when somebody has a leak and when there is an issue with a meter or an issue with a line. So this was the motivation for basically Daniel to talk to me and say, hey, Elizabeth, what would it take to convert us from cubic feet to gallons? And I said, well, it's just math. It's not that big of a deal. Well, yeah, it's just math. And then you do the math and you realize I need an engineer to double check my work because maybe my math is not correct. And so sure enough, you'll see in the red there is the corrections from Ted Pooler at HLA. And I've known Ted for 20 years. He is one of the best in the field in this. And I left the red on purpose because I wanted you guys to understand that this is math, it is complicated math, but it's not hard once you get it right. So all we're doing here, and this is completely math-based, we are simply converting what usage from 3.1 to 12 is in cubic feet to gallons, and it would be usage 23 to 90. So that is all it is. And so the rate per gallon changes, and you'll see that is 0.24. And when you do those math, it does get you to the right numbers. So we're doing apples to apples. There's no oranges involved. Just wanted to make sure that you understood that if anybody comes in or needs to talk to us about it, we will have two parallel systems running for a while. We will have some customers on cubic feet and we will have some customers on gallons. The reason for this is because we'll do a slow changeover. We won't just start, pulling meters that are bad. We will only pull meters that are bad or that are scheduled for change and then replace those meters. So this could take up to 3 to 4 years to do this conversion. So that's why it's necessary to have both rates on our books and have these be correct. So with that, I'll take any questions.
All right, Council, we'll go down the list and ask questions. We have first Councilor Hicks.
No questions, just math.
Okay, Councilor Hart.
Today when I was trying to sort that out, the math did evade me. But thanks for the explanation, because now it makes a lot better sense to me as to what we're trying to do. So thank you. That makes it a little easier to understand.
Councilor Restucci.
Makes common sense to me. I'm glad that we're moving in this direction.
Deputy Mayor Broersma.
The only question that I would have had, and this made it pretty clear, is our water bill every month going to go up? And it doesn't look like it is. And I think that's the one that's going to hit the bottom line for most people. They want to make sure that their water bill is not going to go up significantly. So I'm in favor of changing this over. Per gallon makes a lot more sense in my head than cubic feet. Has been said, measuring cubic feet and trying to understand that is not easy to grasp. So well done.
Councilor Henry.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
I don't have any questions or comments either. So thank you for that presentation. It makes sense.
And then one more thing, there will be a sewer portion of this. I just haven't completed it. The pool got in the way. So the sewer will be exactly the same type of calculation. It'll just be a number that we make sure we're charging the same amount, whether it's gallons or cubic feet. So people's bills will not go up or down. It'll be based on usage, and that usage will be comparable.
Perfect. Okay, up next on our agenda, we have a second quarter budget amendment and federal ARPA allocation roadmap. Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Casey, would you like to drive for this one, or do you want me to put the presentation on?
I can, I think I've got it here. Yeah, whoops. Yeah, I can, can I share screen?
Yes, you can.
All right. All right. Is council seeing, is everyone seeing the title slide?
Yes.
All right. See if I can get back to. Need to be able to advance it. Sorry for the slight delay here. All right. So the purpose of this discussion is kind of introduce a great deal of information for council's consideration. Obviously, we're not trying to get to decisions tonight or actions in the immediate term. We're looking at two different but related areas of activity. The first, we'll be looking at our current budget, the 2021 adopted budget, and how we're progressing year to date, and how that, as that unfolds, we are seeing that we may have some capacity for investment if council so chooses. And we are, providing an overview of a number of potential enhancements the council and staff have developed over time. And then secondly, we are expecting to receive quite a substantial infusion of federal dollars, federal aid through the American Rescue Plan Act. But as we shared with you in the written materials associated with this briefing, and not on the slides, of course, in that kind of detail, but close to 50 pages of detailed regulations, requirements, and provisions governing how these federal dollars can be used. There's a lot to digest in that information. There's a lot of references and call outs to other existing federal programs that was designed to actually streamline and keep some of this simpler because rather than inventing new program requirements or new restrictions or new regulations, they simply called back to existing ones. But you still have to know where all those call outs are. So there's a lot to navigate in this. So our hope tonight is to begin this dialogue with you so that over the course of June and July, we can dive into this in more detail and help council kind of make some decisions around priorities where you would like to invest both in the 2021 budget, if you wish to do that, or where you might go with the federal funding allocation. So some of this is background that you've seen before. Some of it we've been able to update. Just like to kind of help council ground you and also the public in kind of where our budget is at. As council is well aware, our budget is made up of several funds. Some have historically been healthier than others, and each is supported by distinct sets of revenues. We have been seeing some progress in the local economy. When I arrived in 2019, our poverty rate was close to 25%. And the most recent figures that I've seen from US Census is that has eased slightly down to about 22.5%. It's still higher than Yakima or Washington rates, but it is improving. Our median income has gone up just a bit. It was below 40,000 2 years ago, and it's now over 42, almost 43,000. So those are some positive signs in the local economy structurally. We've also made a lot of progress in the last few years in strengthening our financial position, building our ending fund balances and reserves, adopting and then following through on a plan to increase our general fund ending fund balance each year, and ending our budget years successfully in the black and within budget. We did that for the first time in a decade in 2019 and repeated that in 2020, despite everything that was going on with COVID and frankly, the loss of a fair amount of revenue during the COVID pandemic. So what the next couple of slides, and I'll invite Director Alba to kind of jump in and help me explain anything here. But this is really just to kind of give you a sense of the general position of each of our funds now that we're 5 full months into the year. For kind of a quick reference, as you'll note at the bottom of the slide, we reference that as of May 31st, that would represent being about 42% of the way through the budget year. So part of what we're looking for and what we check, internally each month is our revenues coming in at about that level or above. That's good. If they're below that, we want to look into why. Same thing with expenditures. If our expenditures are coming in slightly below that target number, then that represents hopefully that we're being very diligent and frugal in how we're spending. But we also watch for funds that might be coming in above, and often there are valid reasons as to why. It might be the timing of a large payment or something like that that contributes to why something might be a little higher than expected. But we make sure we're looking at that. The general fund, of course, is our largest single fund, and it is in a really strong position right now. Our revenues have come in above the original projections by about 5%, and our expenditures are coming in about 3 to 4% below the target. So we're managing kind of right in a nice zone there. Most of our other funds are about where we want them to be. Some have some anomalies, but usually it's in much smaller funds. and Elizabeth would be prepared to answer any questions if you have them on this slide or the next one. I'll just briefly jump to the next slide so you can see this is sort of the bottom line overall across all funds. We're about 42% of the way through the year. We've received about 50% of our budgeted revenues already, and overall expenditures are just a little below 26%. And some of that is because of certain projects or things, activities that were budgeted in some of these funds like water or sewer that haven't fully gotten off the ground yet, but are budgeted for this year. So we'll see this continue to evolve. Before I go on, are there questions for Elizabeth about any of the funds on either of these two slides?
Council members, questions, comments? Hearing none, I think we're good to proceed, Mr. City Manager.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next, this is information that Director Alba presented to you first time back in March, where we were looking at where our actual fund balances at the beginning of the year had come in higher, stronger than what we had been projecting in our budgeted amounts when we were trying to figure out our budget in 2020. Some funds came in quite a bit stronger, some just slightly. The overall, in the general fund, we were about $500,000 to the good, which was very exciting to see. Most of the others are much closer, but still generally positive. Water came in pretty strong. Sewer came in pretty good. These also factored in all of the budget amendments that you already approved in budget amendment number 1. These don't yet include a couple of, oops, sorry, I went one too far. That went, one that you've since approved, and I want to say it's in one of the public works funds. I forget if it was water or sewer. It was sewer. It was the sewer lift station project. You did approve going forward with the sewer lift station project. That's to support the additional capacity there on Lincoln and Allen in that area, that southeast portion off of Allen Road. That's about $600,000. So we're going to be factoring that into budget amendment 2. But the net effect of all of this is that we're still to the good, still positive across all funds by a little over $800,000. Any questions for us on any of those figures? As I said, most of this is a repeat from the information that we prepared for you in March.
Council, questions or comments?
Bill, it's nice to see it in black and white.
Thank you.
Very good.
All right. So the question before council, kind of like we asked in March, we want to revisit with you is, given that our financial position continues to look fairly stable, the economy as a whole in the country is coming back fairly strong. There are definitely some challenges in the marketplace and in the economy. There are still supply chain issues ramping up. To meet pent-up demand has been challenging for a number of sectors. But given where we're at, is council open to adding to this year's budget any enhancements, any of the proposals that have been considered in the past as part of the second quarter budget amendment process that we'll be bringing forward to you in July. If there's a capacity of about 840 across all funds, obviously that's something where the spending might occur has to be considered. But we wanted to cue that up for you early so that you had really a good amount of time during the month of June and into early July to be considering some of the options. With that, I'll go into a review. Some of this is information you've seen before. Council will recall that in both 2019 and 2020, during the budget deliberations, we invited requests and recommendations from both staff and from you for potential enhancements, what we call enhancements, budget requests, either one-time expenditures like new purchases, new equipment. Others might be in additional staffing, program enhancements. A lot of this discussion is around, what levels of service across the different lines of business that the city offers, what levels of service does council want to try to fund and support, recognizing that it's always challenging to meet all of the expectations for the desired services that community would like to see provided. We don't have an infinite resource base, and so it is all about making choices and prioritizing. And any and all of these ideas have merit and have potential benefits to the community and to the efficient and effective and sound administration of the city and the delivery of services to the public. So, these are a number of different ideas that have been we've kicked around in the past. I don't plan to go line by line through all of these. As I said, we've had a discussion on a lot of them in the past, but I leave these here for your reference and as a kind of reminder of some of the ideas that have been proposed. But these were ones that kind of fell below the threshold of what we thought back in 2020 when we were adopting the budget for this year. These had fell just below the line of where council kind of had to draw a line and say, okay, we can make certain investments, but can't go, it wasn't prudent at that time to try to think about going further with making some of these commitments. The next slide is another group of those different areas. Some of it is restoring positions, some of it is new acquisitions, some of it is new services. I've got one more of these, or is this it? Yes, one more. Again, this was all on the list of potential enhancements that were considered for 2021. As I mentioned above, we think we might have capacity across all funds now, a little north of 800,000. The 2021 enhancement list, totaled at nearly $2.5 million. So there's a definite gap between our resources and everything that we might want to do. But this reminds you of some of those. In addition, as we've emerged from the pandemic and looked at the impacts on workload, looked at impacts from the most recently concluded legislative session, changes in laws around policing, around land use and planning. I have continued having dialogue with the department heads around where do they see either emerging needs or potential new requests, things that weren't quite on our radar last summer and fall as we were preparing a budget. So that's what the next couple of slides present to council. These are some emergent ideas. Some may assume a higher priority for council than ones that we've been considering last year. Some may be lower, but I will take a few moments to talk about some of these just so council has that information. There's a handful that come in our public safety arena. We've already seen, for example, increased overtime due to workload issues in the police department. We've seen interest in the community for investments in some tools to help public safety with doing its job. The fire chief has been doing some really in-depth analysis of the staffing and configuration of the fire department. This is something I support any department head in doing because especially when we have a vacancy in a position, it's an opportune time to look at the structure and the organization and make sure that the configuration of positions is meeting our service needs most effectively. And so he's taken that step. He's done that critical thinking and has an idea, a recommendation that we'd like to invite council to consider related to the structure of the fire department. And likewise in planning and land use planning and code enforcement. We're definitely seeing that the community's desire for levels of service there are sometimes hard to meet. Some of that we can achieve through some improvements we can achieve through better technology and systems, and we are taking those steps. But sometimes it's just a matter of making sure there's enough hours in the day to get to all the work that exists out there. And so there's some proposals around that to enhance levels of service there. Continuing on, we were disappointed. Most of the rest of this comes in Public Works and then IT. We were disappointed last month to get word back from the AARP that our grant application for the ADA parking at the senior center was denied. And so we're looking at, well, we could potentially pay for this out of REIT, but we've already been advised we can't use REIT for this until we've completed our comprehensive plan and adopted a 6-year capital facilities plan. That would push it again another year out, probably until 2022. That might be an investment that council chooses to make out of our general fund, out of the fund balance that we have now. Council is certainly aware we have seen a marked increase in the level of projects and large project activity out of Public Works. We've been looking at the possibility of at what point do we need to restore the superintendent position that handles day-to-day operations so that the director can maintain proper focus on the higher level contracts management, projects management, grants administration duties that we have. In IT, we have a number of possible proposals there. I would probably call out perhaps the most concerning is we got word from County IT last month, I think it was, that one of our critical legacy servers is reaching its failure point.
Mr. City Manager?
Yes, sir.
What server is that?
That's I already advised Finance Director Alba. I said, make sure you can be ready when we get asked, what does it actually do?
Yeah.
So she'll be prepared to talk about that here in a moment. I think she may have stepped away though for a moment. So we'll, when she gets back in, I'll defer that. We looks like she's coming back.
Thank you.
Do you need a minute, Elizabeth, or are you ready to come back on that?
No, I'm ready to come back on it. And actually, I did not get an answer from our IT department on which one that actually is. But when I've spoken to them about it in the past, it seems like this is the one that hosts all of our virtual servers. So if I remember correctly, it's the one that houses all of the virtual servers. But I will get that answer in solid writing and I will email it to City Manager and Council.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
They were able to give us a cost estimate, which was a little jolting. But anyway, that one came in very recently, so that we did want to kind of bring that to council's attention. It may not surprise anyone here to recognize how quickly we're able to identify yet another almost $1 million in potential investments to meet expressed needs that have been voiced by council members, by members of the community. And so, you know, it's the reality I know you all live with and work through, and you know, it's part of why we're trying to kick this communication off early and conversation off early, is so that we can be responsive to the information you need, and developing that further in the areas where you may want to prioritize or narrow things down. And frankly, you know, given some of the uncertainty, council may still want to keep a prudent reserve or a prudent exercise some prudent caution around how much of our capacity we commit at this time. So a lot to think about. With that, the next slide, met with leadership team, had some conversations internally. based on kind of staff's perspective, we have identified about a little less than $500,000 across all funds in some of the projects and investments that we thought within 2021 might most advance the capacity of the city to achieve the levels of service being desired. I won't go over all of these again. We just kind of talked about most of them. But this would give council at least kind of staff's perspective on where some of those investments might come, and still leave aside a fair amount of the potential positive fund balances that we have. As I said, the ask tonight is not for decisions or action, but just information and to kind of queue up the conversations to come, and certainly solicit any feedback on what would be most helpful to you as you consider these or other ideas in June and going into July. With that, I'll pause before we jump into the American Rescue Plan.
Council members, questions or comments on these items that Mr. Casey covered?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to commend the city manager and staff for the amount of work that they put into this and prioritizing. I know each department head is going to want to get as much of those funds into their department as absolutely possible. It's only normal. And my biggest concern with all of this as we came into this was, between staff and council ideas over the past couple of years, we had somewhere over $3 million worth of ideas, all asking for that $800,000 that we may have available. So I do appreciate the work, especially on this final slide. I am concerned with the fact that as human beings, every one of us, myself included, when we come into a windfall, the first thing we do is spend it. And so I'm feeling very cautious about that. We've worked very hard over the last few years to get our fund balances where they are. And I'm very proud of our accomplishments over the last year. I think staff has every reason to be very proud of that. And so I want to be cautious that, maybe that we can use some of that to improve our fund balances even more and get that reserve fund and get those savings up to where we can be a little more comfortable. But I really like what I see on this last slide. I think it's an awesome starting point for discussion.
I just, this is Julia. I really am impressed by how this final slide, as far as enhancement requests has come along. But I do think, the things that we need to fix, we need to fix. And as Deputy Mayor Boersma said, we do want to make sure that we continue to maintain a healthy contingency fund. But I don't want us to go cheap, and I don't want us to overlook the fact that we do need occasionally to spend some money on things that are really needed. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So I kind of would agree with my colleagues. I am a little bit concerned, being part of the original council that made some of these changes that are being recommended, to go back in the opposite direction, but I'm willing to have that conversation. It's okay. I mean, things change. So over time, we may need to make changes, but I am a little bit concerned about plussing up staff in places where we've eliminated staff in the past.
I have to agree.
And I guess that's one of my concerns as well. Obviously, one-time expenditures are obviously, if they're within budget and we can afford them and are absolutely are needed, absolutely. Once we start adding bodies, that's going to be a recurring expense going forward, and it's not going to be a one-time expenditure. So I'm with a couple council members as far as the concern of additional staff, which obviously in turn will increase year to year based on pay raises and everything else that comes with it. So obviously these enhancement requests, like a couple Deputy Mayor Boersma mentioned, we all want or wish we could have more money to be able to spend in different areas that we see are important to us. And having this somewhat in a visualized manner and having a dollar amount attached to it does give us some room for interpretation as far as what is important to the city manager, what's important to the department heads, and I appreciate the work put into it.
Thank you. And if I might, on this slide, we did want to acknowledge that point. That is a really important point that council's making there. Not just what it costs in this year, but what it will cost as you annualize these in future years. There's an expression I've heard in budgeting, kind of borrowing from a ship going through the water. It creates a bow wave in front of it. And so as you're pushing through the water, you're creating this bow wave. And the same thing happens with budgets. If you adopt something and make a commitment this year, even if this year's expenditure is affordable, you're creating a bow wave into future budgets, especially with those long-term ongoing commitments. And so we're very cognizant of that, and wanted to be transparent about there are some bow waves with some of these enhancements that will carry forward into future budget years if you choose, to go forward with them. But that, and that's just, an aspect of budgeting. So there's something to be, transparent and aware of. If we can be as clear about and project as effectively as we can about what those bow waves are going to be, then you can, have greater confidence that you're making an informed decision about not just the commitment this year, but what that might mean in the future. And certainly we want to help you be able to do that.
Any council members, additional questions or comments on these slides?
Well done.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Casey, you're good to move forward.
All right. So now comes a little bit different twist on the problem of having, if you could call it a problem, of having more money than you were expecting to have. And this is the funds that the city is slated to receive under the American Rescue Plan Act. As I mentioned, the federal government, the U.S. Treasury Department, has come out with a very densely written, it's 39 pages, very small font, 3 columns wide, regulations governing expenditures under the American Rescue Plan Act for local governments. The requirements and the kind of the restrictions on what we can do with the funding that'll be coming to small cities. I've summarized them here. The first category, and I'll kind of read it to emphasize some of it. We can use some of the money. Council can allocate some of the money that we're going to be receiving to addressing the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. But the rules also specify it's about helping businesses recover from past impacts. It's not about general economic development. In fact, specifically, there's language in there. Generally, recipients may not use the funds for general economic development or workforce development. It has to be about remediating the impacts on businesses, which means also there's going to be requirements about those businesses or households will need to be able to demonstrate the economic harm they suffered, because it's likely that's part of what we will be audited on in terms of how we allocate these funds. Is, do we know that they went to recipients who were harmed by the pandemic? Another option that's available is to be able to provide premium pay to essential employees or grants to their employers. And again, that's a little more back looking towards folks who had to continue working in sometimes very challenging conditions during the pandemic. Providing government services affected by projected revenue reductions over 2020 and 2023 resulting from COVID-19. We'll get into this a little bit more, but this is about replacing revenue that the city has lost as a result of the pandemic. But the way the rules are written, what we actually have to do is a fairly complicated calculation to estimate what would our revenue growth have been had the pandemic not occurred, and project that growth out over the next 2 to 3 years. And so there's a whole formula way that has to be done. It takes into account our past revenue growth patterns. It takes into account certain funds, and we're not allowed to apply all funds. So for example, water, sewer, garbage, utilities, those are not counted or eligible as part of the base calculation. So Elizabeth, Director Alba has been already starting to chew on how to do this calculation to even come up with a number for council as to what this might be. And so we'll be coming back to council with that information, but that is something that council could choose to do. Again, going back to the point that several of you made a moment ago, kind of stabilizing our reserves, stabilizing our base funding. This is something that we can use the ARPA money for. We can also invest in water and sewer infrastructure. However, this is one of those examples where I mentioned they called out to existing programs. So there are already rules in place and boundaries around it. So we can invest in water sewer infrastructure, but only if it would have otherwise been eligible through the Environmental Protection Agency's Clean Water State Revolving Fund program or Drinking Water State Revolving Program. So it's about serving existing residential customers and improving either the environmental quality or their compliance with water health standards. This isn't about expanding our infrastructure into new areas or expanding beyond, for commercial development. It's about improving the safety and health and security of our water and sewer infrastructure. And then lastly, there's been a lot of talk about the potential in this program to extend broadband access. But here again, it has to meet a specific defined need to serve unserved or underserved households who have minimum speeds of less than 25 megabytes per second now. And the project has to get them to over 100 megabytes per second for both download and upload speeds. So as we delve into these rules, it does get a little more specific. So as I mentioned, these were just issued on May 24th. So just a couple weeks ago. What the rules also provide is, since this is coming through the state, we were told that the state was going to be sending out an email or a request to every city requesting certain information, which is listed there. And then the city was going to have to supply some paperwork. Now, I'm pleased to announce that at 4:53 p.m. tonight, the State Office of Financial Management sent this email. We just got it a couple hours before this meeting. So we've just gotten this. It went to Mayor Guerrero. City clerk forwarded it on to Elizabeth and I to start looking through, and then we'll be happy to work with the mayor here to get all the information together necessary to respond to the state. But there's certain threshold paperwork that we have to complete at this point. Once that's done, then they will be distributing. That will make us eligible for the distribution of our funds. Now, US Treasury didn't provide the exact amount. They told each state to do a calculation. At the time we were putting this slide together last week, we didn't know what our allocation was going to be. We'd seen estimates from US Senate offices and from AWC that it might be about $3.5 million for Sunnyside. I am pleased to share, as of the information coming out tonight, $3.5 million was a little pessimistic. They've announced and released that we will be getting $4,688,569 in two payments, one in 2021 of $2,344,285 and an identical payment in 2022. Now, the state has 30 days to distribute, so we've got to get this paperwork back in and get through the process. That next step of waiting to hear from the state, well, we heard from the state tonight. So this slide, I was like, okay, how do we help figure out what we're going to do with this, given all these rules and regulations and requirements? And I kind of scanned around on the internet, different models that different cities are using and analysts and so forth. So I put this slide together just as kind of an amalgam of some of the considerations that different jurisdictions are looking at and how to approach prioritizing what they might do with the funds. There's both, and because this is over a couple of year period, what I was seeing commonly was people kind of taking a look at some short-term fixes and investments, as well as trying to keep an eye on what are some things that support us in the long term, that position us, for the future. So short-term examples include, are there still businesses and households here in our community that are in crisis, that are still suffering, hardship as a result of the disruptions from the pandemic? And if so, are there things that, the city could apply some of these funds to help with that? Second, stabilizing budgets. We've talked about this already this evening. Like many other cities, we saw revenues drop from the pandemic. And so, it can be very important to stabilize weakened funds and replenish reserves. And then some cities actually had, and we've seen examples, we cut back service hours and so forth. We were fortunate that we did not have to do any layoffs as a result of the pandemic. But nevertheless, we cut back services in the jail. We have cut back services a little bit at the pool. But some cities are using these funds to restore positions and services that they had to cut during the pandemic. And then longer term, some examples that I saw out there was, are there opportunities for cities to collaborate, potentially partner with each other to meet regional or broader needs that may be difficult for individuals to do and address issues on their own, but could perhaps be more effective collectively? And then are there ways to invest in our physical infrastructure like water, sewer, broadband, to strengthen our safety, our accessibility, and the security of critical systems? So with that in mind, again, working with the leadership team, we began brainstorming just to kind of kick off the thinking for council. What are some potential areas? Now, as like I said, obviously this slide is now out of date. We were thinking 3.6 million. That's now 4.7 million, rounding. So about 2.3 million a year. But these were some ideas that we had come up with, that we started kicking around, that might be responsive to some of the things that council's hearing from the community. So for example, right off the bat, replacing some of our lost revenues. And that might be something we spend, and do over time, stabilize, use some of this to help stabilize the city's budgets, not just in 21, but in 22, 23, 24, and kind of have a plan for that over time. We know our local tourism and hospitality sector was hit hard. The LTAC fund shows the impact there. We know that certain small businesses remain challenged financially as a result. Now, there are other programs also available and services coming, funds flowing out of the ARPA that may also be able to help them. So that's something else we'll be tracking. One idea that I've seen out there is a number of households have struggled with utility payments, and some areas are harder hit than others. There are some cities in the valley that have had almost no residents fall behind on their utility payments during the pandemic. We have seen an impact here. And right now we have about 500 households who are past due for about 300,000. Now, as I mentioned before, in order to qualify under the federal requirements, we would almost certainly have to do some sort of, there'd have to be some application and eligibility validation process for a household to demonstrate that they had an economic hardship as a result of the pandemic in order to qualify. So this might not be the total of who could qualify, but that would be an eligible expense, would be to help households who were struggling with their utility payments. Likewise, some cities are looking at providing assistance to residents who either are at risk of losing their homes because they can no longer pay their rent, and the eviction moratorium will be coming off at the end of June, or as the property owners, they are struggling to pay their mortgage as a result of economic hardship from the pandemic. So it's not just renters, it can be mortgage holders. That's something that is a possibility. And then just to kind of throw something in there that's a little more about the long term. Goodness knows we are seeing some devastating cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. We saw it with the Colonial Pipeline here not too long ago, and we know there are others out there. Earlier, Finance Director Alva and Director Fisher, we were talking about the improvements we're making with our base stations for water. We're reliant more and more on software systems and applications and technology to be able to run our critical infrastructure. We could use these funds to really shore up the cybersecurity protections that we have for that kind of infrastructure. So just kind of kicking it off. I'm sure there's a lot more great creative ideas out there to be surfaced, but if I would maybe suggest anything to council in this is, I think it may have been Deputy Mayor earlier who talked about when we are presented with money, the impulse in a sense is, okay, what do we do with this? Why would we spend it? There is some urgency. There may be some things that are urgent to do to assist the community in the short term, but we also can take a long view on a lot of this. We're not under the deadline that we were with the CARES Act to get all the money spent and reimbursed by the end of 2020. So this is a conversation that can unfold on a more deliberative pace over the next few months and even into the fall if council so chooses. So that's kind of where we're at. That brings me to kind of the next steps we talked about. Most of these are focusing on the second quarter budget amendment. But if council does have some immediate ideas and there's consensus to move forward on certain things under the ARPA funds, we could potentially even do some of those investments as early as the July allocation. We should have a lot more information from the state by then, and we might actually have the first tranche transferred by then. We're just not sure of the details yet. So with that took it right up to 8 o'clock. I was hoping to be done before 8, but happy to answer any questions or
All right, council, questions or comments on this part of the presentation?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. There's a lot of information here to digest, Mr. City Manager. Obviously, I'm going to be looking over a lot of this information. I appreciate all the work that you and the staff have done on this. I'll say my 2 cents, and then council can obviously weigh in. I'm kind of, in the idea that we take a long look at this and we don't make any decisions quickly and that we shore up finances. But there is one thing that we do need to spend money on, and that's cybersecurity. I deal with this on a daily basis, dealing with clients who have been hacked. In the US, a data breach costs a company an average of $8.9 million. We know of a number of cities in the country who have been hit with cybersecurity attacks that cost them hundreds of thousands, in some cases, millions of dollars in order to get that data back. So I would strongly recommend that if we have cybersecurity issues that need to be addressed, that those go high on our list.
Okay, additional questions or comments, council?
And Mr. Mayor, I'm going to agree with Mr. Restucci here. We just had in the last few weeks, we've had cyber attacks on an oil pipeline, on the world's largest meat processor. And we hear continuously of, like he said, cities and corporations being held hostage basically in order to get their information back. And we do need to think long-term about protecting our city. And that is one of the important steps that we have to take. So I think that one should be high on our priority list, but we do need to take a long view. And I think decisions made in haste can be repented of over at our leisure. So we don't want to rush necessarily into making decisions, but that one is a high one in my view as well.
I'm in agreement with both Councilman Restucci and Deputy Mayor Boersma. Taking the long view is very, very important at this point. I mean, we have an opportunity to shore up our finances in our community, in our counts, in our city budgets. But again, since public safety is one of our primary goals and policies, I think that should be one of our top priorities, is making sure that we have the best security that we can create for all the data that we do collect. So I would agree with that. I'm excited to look at the possibilities coming down to us through these allegation and even our enhancement reviews. So this has been very interesting and very helpful tonight. So I thank you and your staff, Mr. Casey and Mr. Martin, for all of the work on this. This is very, very interesting stuff. Thank you.
Council, additional questions or comments? All right, I think we're good to move on, Mr. Casey. You are still muted, sir.
Sorry, I was trying to find the stop share button. All right. I think with that, we'll just quickly go over upcoming council agendas. Council's seen a lot of this already. I won't take too much time on it. We have 2 regular meetings still left in June that will be in kind of the hybrid format for. We fully intend that by July, assuming the governor goes forward with lifting the restrictions, which the last word I heard on that is whether the state has reached 70% vaccination rates or not. By June 30th, they will be lifting the vast majority of the restrictions on June 30. If we get to 70% vaccination rates quicker, they may lift the restrictions quicker. So we, of course, will be monitoring that in case that allows us to, for example, move forward with some of this, like the June 28th meeting, for example, might very well be something that could be held under the eased restrictions in person. So probably the biggest items I'll mention, not to steal Director Fisher's thunder on this, but I'll just report that bid opening for Midvale Road construction project has occurred, and the bids came in favorably. And so we're very excited to be able to bring that project forward coming up soon. And then we are continuing to work with FAA on the airport contract. That also, we've been working with them to kind of pare down a little bit. And then, as Director Alba talked about earlier this evening, we've got the water sewer rate ordinance tentatively set for June 28th. The water side of it, she reported this evening, is largely, that work is largely done, but we're still waiting kind of some final math to make sure we've got the sewer rates ready, but we'll have that ordinance for you then. The COVID-19 emergency declaration, I fully, we anticipate that'll be quite a bit scaled back as well. I think for July, we're primarily looking at comprehensive plan working on the first workshop. So that gives you a little flavor of what's coming up.
Goody.
All right, so there being no further business to come before council, and without objection, I adjourn this meeting at 8:08 p.m. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Good job, everybody.
Not at all.
Thanks.